Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. It's September, and a couple notable things about September. It's World Suicide Prevention Day. It's actually September 10th, already passed us, but I feel it's important to recognize this day, especially in with everything going on. Their theme this month was creating hope through action. Being a leader in church in the past, I was looking into some of the statistics, and it's not very promising, especially for pastors. I have a lot of friends who are pastors or who have walked away. 1 in 5 Protestant senior pastors are, they have, these are new statistics. Obviously, with statistics, it's just a reminder of the importance. I always like to bring something a little bit new. I know people come from different parts of the world, different beliefs, but I just like to keep talking. And today, I have a new guest. Her name is Aggie. Is that correct? Hold on one second. Thank you so much for coming on and just being part of the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to dive into this topic with you. I think it's a very necessary topic that most people don't talk about, especially in the church.
It's difficult, and I do appreciate you coming on and continuing. It's some things that are difficult are usually the things we need to talk more about, not less about.
Yes.
Little disclaimer. Wherever you are in the world, I do encourage you, whether it's a church, a temple, whatever, a group that you feel comfortable enough to say, I need help. I just want to encourage you to find help, whether it's family, a coworker, just find that help. On the Revive Ministries website, I do have a list of international helplines. Sometimes helplines are not very comfortable with them, but I do want to encourage you to know that it's out there. I always encourage those working in the mental health field, whatever works, at the same time, whatever gets you talking, whatever you feel comfortable, say, you know what, I don't feel good, but I'm going to tell someone. That's what I encourage anyone who's listening. I know I did skip over real quick that it is Recovery Month in the States, and the nice thing about that is they have this idea, restore every aspect of life, the holistic approach. So whatever it is, it's not just getting the right medication or seeing the right therapist. It's also the community, the environment, where you're at, and I feel that it's promising that we're looking outward, not just towards certain aspects, because I know it's different for everyone. I'm going to start off with a quote, Aggie, that I always start with a quote because people say it better than me. I remember in school I read Mark Twain, and this one quote says, "A man cannot be comfortable without his own approval." What comes to mind when you think about that? When you think about this month or any aspect? What do you think about when you hear this quote?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't make that clear. Yeah. What comes to mind? And then I'll just share what I think. I like these.
Yeah. That's a very interesting quote, actually. Very complex, I think. A man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. I feel like, to me, that means, like, if I can't accept who I am, who God created me to be, because of trauma, because of, all the pains in the world, then I can't be flourishing. I can't live to the fullest life that Jesus has promised in John 10:10 that he created me to be. So I feel like you said, like, therapy and seeking professional help is super important. And I feel, the church has been lacking in addressing mental health issues and therapy and such. We take care of our physical bodies. We take care of spiritual matters, but I don't think we take enough care of the mental. And yes. I believe we are one being, right? Like body, mind, and soul. Like Jesus cares about every part of our being. So yeah, that's what it means to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel it's not just as we say, the things we're good at, but also the things that we are not so good at. When I read this quote, a man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. We take ourselves with us wherever we go, no matter what it is, whether it's going to church, whether it's being around coworkers, if we don't feel we really like a part of ourselves. And I feel it's very it's interesting because it does become one of the biggest barriers when someone says, am I worth healing? Am I worth the time to heal?
Yeah.
Whether it's faith-based or not, it's a very deep question to ask yourself, especially when it comes to mental health, suicide. There's so many cultural barriers, and I'm half South Korean and half Puerto Rican, so it's kind of all confused. And there's also cultural barriers there. So I like being faith-based. Personally, I like the bigger picture that that helps me kind of expand out. Like in some of the older testament that said God had no edges, in the sense that there's something that I felt that it was constant, and that was comforting. The idea that it wasn't something that I'm used to in this world, that usually people can disappoint, people can not be not kind. So when I think about that, I think whatever gets you to the point where you can be honest and say to yourself, I'm not where I want to be, I don't like this part. But what I found even further, Aggie, is that even if the parts I don't like is part of me, and I have to learn to not hate it. It's like, because it becomes like this really toxic almost barrier. And I see it all the time. It's easy to see it from other angles, but not ourselves. Looking ourselves in the mirror in that regard. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like the parts that I hate about myself, like not the parts that was inflicted upon me, but the parts that God created me. Like I'm an introvert, and like naturally, like sometimes I hate that when I hear like extroverts speak so well and just they make friends so easily. I'm like, oh, why can't I be more extrovert? But that's not how God made me, and I have to be okay with that. And I think there's strength in extroverts. I mean, extroverts and strength in introverts too. So,
yeah, I think it's just not only just externally validating ourselves, but internally allowing ourselves to really see us for who we are. It was very shocking. I know I mentioned briefly, but we talk about suicide. There's the pressure of pastors. People are walking out. Young pastors they're burnt out. And this study right here, I was reading that 40% of pastors have a high risk of burnout. And we've heard stories. Don't like to mention, but that people don't ask for help, and they're pastors, and you were like, what went wrong? What happened? Why did this? Obviously. But there's, it's about taking care of oneself. And I just like how, not everyone who comes on this podcast is Christian, and that's totally fine. I think it's a universal conversation, but I am inspired when there's someone who is a Christian who actually sees, this isn't right. We need to take care of our own better. We need to be kinder to each other. We need to be that good Samaritan to each other, as opposed to this hypercritical. I remember as a church member, I was like, as a leader, when you experience a lot of kind of complaints, you stop asking, like, why are you asking me this? I asked who is it? I asked who is it? Because unfortunately, it can be that nitpicky. But we are human beings, and it's not just me saying that. It's just, can we be kinder and take care of our own better? We talk about suicide. We talk about recovery. Any thoughts of that? How can we?
I completely agree. Taking care of one another, and that's basically like when Jesus said, I don't know if it's Jesus, but it's in the Bible, like bear each other burdens so that you fulfill the law of Christ. Like he created the church, the community of believers, not to, like you said, like judging one another and like, I don't know, being hypocritical, and not hypocritical, but critical upon one another. But the church is there to love one another, encourage one another, pray and support for one another, right? And I feel like leaders and pastors especially have it so hard, because I feel like we look up to them, and so they feel the weight of always having to look and be put together all the time. Like they can't struggle, they can't, you know what I mean? Like, and so obviously, because they're humans as well, they're still sinful human beings, even though they're leaders, right? I think we just have to see them as human beings first, instead of
Yeah.
leaders, whatever role or position or titles. But I also feel like the enemy is at work always, 24/7, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they attack pastors and leaders because obviously they have a high calling. And I feel like with us two podcasters too, because we share hope and healing and truth that can set people free, that can bring them to the foot of Jesus to heal it. And honestly, last week? I think it was last Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So I am starting my own new podcast, which is Unspoken. The goal of this podcast is to bring everything into the light, like people's most rawest, ugliest, what people say most shameful part of your story. We lay it all bare, all the unspoken parts of your stories and all the unspoken stories, so that his name, Jesus's name, his love and grace and truth and redemption and power can be spoken and echoed throughout the ends of the earth. So that is the vision and role of my podcast, my upcoming podcast, Unspoken, with Aggie Park. But I felt so much spiritual attack because I had 4 podcast recordings on that weekend to launch it. But I just had panic attacks. I had like mental breakdowns. I was shaking. I couldn't speak. Like it was crazy. So obviously I canceled the recordings. But I feel like, if we are doing something for the Lord, the enemy's gonna hinder it at all costs. So I think as believers, especially, we have to keep leaders and people who are spreading the truth in love. We have to keep them in prayers because we're being attacked like constantly.
And I just remember when I started Revive Ministries, I had it just local. I had people speak at like church and I had music. And I remember back in those days, it's just a topic, and let's be really plain here. No one wants to talk about. No one wants to talk about suicide. Like, we just want to talk about the hope. But unfortunately, the problem with that is we're human beings here, and I tend not to try to proselytize because from my point, because I feel you have to earn the conversations you get. A lot of times you get these people just try to quickly say, oh, you just have to do this. And then when they say yes, they walk away. For me personally, Revive Ministries is separate from me. It's like I love the platform where people can talk and it's respectful. It's just something that wherever they are in their world. I think about in the New Testament with the lepers and how they were just outcasts. How many people feel like outcasts today? And I remember one scene where the disciples were trying to block the leper to come to Jesus, and Jesus just put his hand. But a lot of people just think about the point of him getting blocked and then Jesus healing him. But what I was impressed of was being a leper and going when everyone says he shouldn't go, when everyone's saying, oh, you're just unclean. And I'm like, well, who is really the one who's clean? And in retrospect of Christianity, but these lessons can be learned in just how we treat each other nowadays. We're so hypercritical. We're so judgmental. We just assume way too much. I try to be intentional with friends. Like if they have a skill and they're pretty good at it, or I just like this part of I try to tell them, Aggie, that, hey, I really appreciate you. You're a great piano player, or you're a great this or that. Because nowadays it doesn't really feel like anyone tells each other this, because there's kind of that boundary in that regard. But I also want to mention, and there was this one I just ran into the website before this actual podcast, because I like to bring new, fresh things, and this organization seems to kind of trying to do what we're talking about, especially in the Christian scope, about being okay to not be okay. We heard that before, but going beyond that, I think when Jesus was in Gethsemane and he was right before he knew he was gonna be on the cross, he was in pain, he was in turmoil, and like in this world, there's a lot of that, and it's very easy for us to kind of shape it in our narrative, what we think is what life is. But I think we can learn a lot from other people, especially those, whether they're Christian, whether they're not, just people in general. We're here to help and serve and to be that support. And I feel sometimes we lose sight of that. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Everything you said, I completely agree. Like, because I feel like as Christians, and I've been there too, like, because we know the word, right? And so we know the right things to say. We can quote scripture here and there, but if we don't really care about the person or walk life or walk the struggle or whatever tough situation that person is walking through, are we doing that really out of love or out of our own selfish whatever it may be, right? Yeah. So it's like, no, we have to really care about the person and walk life with that person, not just like throwing like Bible verses and like, okay, bye, you deal with it. And I also feel like as a Christian, I thought, because we have the Holy Spirit, obviously we can't struggle with anything, or like if we struggle with anything, we should overcome it like so quickly. But like Jesus is like showing me and like humbling me that no, everything is such a process. The sanctification is a process. Healing is a process. Like that is why we need His grace daily, His mercy daily, because if we can conquer it all instantly, I don't think we would think we would need or appreciate His grace. And we need His grace every second of our existence. So,
yeah, I think one book of the Bible that doesn't get talked about is Job. We always talk about the beginning and the end, but it's a commentary of how people see other people struggle. A commentary how we support each other. If a church member is not doing well, or it's just so complicated. And you've been in church environments, I imagine, and you see someone who maybe is in remission for cancer. Everyone's like, praise God. And then, just down the pew, someone lost someone from cancer a week ago. It's so complex. Not a lot of these stories are really out, but it just shows that the simplicity and the earned conversations are never really the focal point. And I feel when we talk about mental health, and it's not about what I say to people, it's how they feel about their experience when I talk to them.
Yes.
And, and getting them to feel like it's okay that that you're struggling. It's okay. Let's try to find you something. Being active and being honest with yourself of how much you can do. I say this from a standpoint. I work almost 5 years in the mental health field, and I've seen a lot of times it's, parent, I'll give you an example and hear your thoughts of it. Just a example I see in different ways. Mom comes in, it's like, he or she's not doing, it's not getting better. He or she just doesn't listen. And I say, I usually work with adults, and like, you have to leave and talk to the person who's suffering. And after I talked to the parent, and I said, well, you're right. You're right. But the last thing I want this person to feel is that they can never come back. Never. There's no timeline. We think about time so weird, because I always struggle with time and energy. I'm like, I don't have enough time. Like, but then when do we have time?
Right.
So for me am I worth enough to heal the time at whatever time it takes to heal? There's, and I feel like that bleeding woman that was grabbed Jesus'
cloak,
robe, just to, and how many years did she experience guilt, shame, burden, all these kind of things, and she didn't give up. And I share these examples because I feel it's very easy to clump each other up generally, but if we are able to take the time it may take and actually say to ourselves, whatever time it takes to heal, it's going to be ongoing. One person said that our story is ongoing. We don't want it. How can I say? It's never, whatever we're at in our life, it's unfinished. So our book started when we were born. So if
Right.
we're okay with the unfinished part and just learn, be honest, take those little steps, I feel it has been at least helpful connecting for myself with others, those who are suffering, connecting with myself, family, and being honest with those struggles, not running away from them, not avoiding them.
Right.
I don't know. These are kind of things that come to mind when we're talking about this.
Yeah, completely agree. I feel like people who haven't experienced trauma or experienced, I guess, similar trauma, like that person that is trying to heal, I don't think they really understand to the fullest how long, and maybe it will take forever until we go home to Jesus. But it's the healing process is ongoing.
Yeah.
Like, it's ongoing, and I feel like there's just so much shame
Oh, yeah.
because when people say, oh, well, you have Jesus, well, you have the Holy Spirit, well, you can pray to Jesus, you have the word and everything, why aren't you healed yet? Well, it's not that simple, because it's just so complex. I can't explain it, but it's just, I feel like during the healing process, Jesus is revealing to me, well, yeah, it is an ongoing process, but it is also kind of a good thing because then I get to be more dependent on him. I get to seek him more. I get to find him more. I get to see his love and his hand during all my trauma and pain more. So I guess it is always a good thing in the bad thing with Jesus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
And
think yeah, go ahead.
mhm.
Sorry.
And then one more thing, when Lazarus died, right? Like temporarily died. Like, because Jesus knew he was going to resurrect Lazarus again in the next moment, but he still wept. So that showed me like he understands our pain. Just because it results in a good ending doesn't mean we can't express or experience our pain, and we shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah.
Jesus can empathize and understand and take the, I don't know, be patient with our emotions in our healing process, then why can't we? Shouldn't we be?
I think that's a great question because it's like, why can't we go deeper? Why can't we grow more? I the whole expression, the customer is always right. I think it's
Yeah.
always kind of seen in such a surface level. But if I own the business and uh, uh, a person came in and said, you guys are not doing this anymore, that anymore. I'm like, well, even if she's wrong, because I'm saying, the policies, we don't usually do this or we don't add this service. The customer always right also makes me see what is going on in my business. Is someone promising something that I'm not promising? Is there some false information about what we're selling, what products we're selling? And then also, is there a need that maybe I have to consider maybe this product to be revamped, because obviously there's a need there. So there's just so much depth. But when it comes to ourselves and we're sad, well, just don't be sad. You shouldn't be sad. But what if the sadness, the emotions that we're experiencing can lead us to further understanding? I think about Jacob wrestling with God. Like, people will kind of laugh at that. Why would you wrestle? I wish more people wrestled with God. I feel like it's important for us to really be honest at how we feel. I feel that's the depth he wants. And I feel it's kind of sad because I asked myself, like, this question right here: when did having an illness or anything you're struggling with become the mirror that defines our worth? Like, we live in the world that I could be born with a birth defect. I could be born with different things. I'm a survivor of attempted suicide. So, like, some people would like, oh, why? Well, does that make me, like, it? There's so much stigma, like you mentioned, but some of the stigma comes from ourselves. Like, I'm not worth the time to heal. Like, I shouldn't have done this. Look at all the things, but that's fine at the moment. But where does this go? It hasn't helped you now. It hasn't helped you later. It just makes you feel like you owe the world, but you never give yourself time to actually
Yeah.
Focus on what is actually bothering you, what is actually being that barrier. It's
Mhm.
messy.
Yeah.
If we're talking about dropping seeds of hope, you gotta put your hands in the dirt a little bit. You can't just sit there with gloves and just be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna do this over here and it'll be fun." No one's really gonna really gravitate to that. And even if it's, and even not talk about proselytizing, just being a person, being there for someone, listen to what's
Yeah.
important to them. Huge, I imagine.
Completely. Yeah. I actually struggled, or I think when I was a kid, I did attempted suicide, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember all the details, but it just stems from just a lot of physical and emotional abuse when I grew up.
Yeah.
And so, because one side of my parents, they didn't really love me, or I don't think he or she didn't want me. So, to me, it's like, wow, if my mom, who's supposed to love me unconditionally, or just maybe just a little bit, like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if they or she doesn't even love me, then what am I worth, And so
Yeah.
I just like went down the rabbit hole of just feeling so worthless and useless all the time. People just treated me like nothing, and I just accepted it because I thought I am nothing, therefore people can treat me like nothing. So it was just a very, very dark seasons of my life. And I just remembered whenever like my mom would hit me, I remember running towards my grandma, who was my safe space. And I just remember one time, because we were living in Germany and my grandma was in Indonesia. So we wanted to visit my grandma, but then we couldn't stay as long as I would have liked in Indonesia for our vacation.
Yeah.
And then I was just so upset. I did not understand why back then, but now I see why. So I was so upset. I was like, I don't want to live anymore. And I took a scissor or knife, and I started like cutting my wrists.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so like dramatic and extreme. But now I realize no, because my grandma was my safe place. My grandma gave me a sense of worth and value that I did not receive from my mom. So if I tell people that, people might think, oh my gosh, Aggie is so dramatic. Why? That's just such a small issue. But then again, it's so complex because in therapy, I'm learning that trauma is stored in your brain. It's stored in your body. So it's like it remembers it. And when you're in so much pain, especially as a kid, you don't know how to handle it. You don't know how to, I guess, deal with it, right? So the only thing that I could have thought of as a kid was hurt myself. That's, I guess, an expression of just expressing my pain, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, and Carl Jung, one of the founders of modern day psychology, he said that loneliness is, and I'm paraphrasing, is the inability to discuss what's important to you. Simply put, like, just think about it for a minute. I could be around a lot of people. I could be around like a Bible study. I could be around a church function. But if I'm not allowed to share what's important to me, how connected do I feel? How much of a person who's on the side, and people are like, well, you should. Well, if that's the case, then why are there pastors burning out? Why are people walking away? Why is it seems like the person who should have the most hope, why do they feel lonely? And then there's even a study in 2024, 1 in 4 pastors felt isolation and contemplated self-harm. This is something that, even if it's a us them thing, that kind of a mentality, it isn't an us them. We're all human. We all face these things. I'm sorry what you experienced, because that whole, oh, it's not a big deal. It was a big deal to you. It was, and unfortunately, that, oh, it's not a big deal. It's external. The question I asked myself, and this is the question, and we're going to lead into a little bit. I want to get to know a little bit more about your story. But before, just this right here, it says, when did our needs and healing matter less than other opinions? others' opinions of ourselves. So it's almost like it matters more how we look on the outside, how people see us, how we are accepted, than actually what our needs are. Maybe I'm not happy. Maybe I'm just so people like you get along with so many people. People really
Yeah.
like you, very kind, but I don't feel great. I don't really like what's going on here, and I think it's that reality when we want to put that mask on really tightly because we don't want the world to see us, because then we may get a lot of backlash. But it's that struggle. I do feel, and obviously my background being still being faith based, and it's hard to find a church that I feel grounded. I still go at times. It's just hard to find that space that I feel safe in, like you mentioned, like your grandma. Like it's a place that immediately don't feel like they're that I'm not going to be taken care of here if I really need help. Not like I'm like seeking help, but it just feels sometimes when you go to a church that even though my faith is strong, I go there, I feel like I have to prepare myself for this or that or this or that. And it's not that I have anything against the church. It's just sometimes it's sad that that's the case. I know there's great churches out there, but sometimes it's very hard to find. I want to ask you, all my guests, new and old, I just like to give people never met you before in my podcast. So is it to your comfort level? Could you share a little bit what brought you here? What brought you doing what you're doing? And anything that you want to share with those who are listening? The floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to gather my thoughts because my story is like complex. So I'm trying to be as clear as possible. Okay, here we go. So I was, before I was born, I was actually separated from my dad. I didn't get to see my dad until I was 6 or 7 years old. And so me and my dad, until today, we're not close. Mm-hmm. And so during the first 7 years, all I remembered was constant emotional and physical abuse from my mom. Like I said before, I don't think she wanted me or loved me because there was not even a single word of a positive word or positive action or affirmation. And so that's when just the lie of worthlessness and valuelessness, I don't know if that's a word, but like that lie started to creep inside of me. But God saw me in my pain because every second of my childhood during those first 7 years, I lived in constant fear, anxiety. I don't know when the next episode of just screaming, hitting, blaming, shouting would occur. So my dad and my mom remarried when I was 7. So we moved from Indonesia to Germany when I was 7. And the crazy part is, a year after we moved, there was a cultural war in Indonesia where the Indonesians raped and killed Chinese people in front of their families. And I'm ethnically Chinese. So I'm like, now I see the Lord's hand of protection over me, because if I didn't come from a Roman family, like Germany would have been out of the picture completely. And Lord knows what could have happened to us, right? But my dad showed me a new sense of love and care and dignity that I didn't even think I was even the slightest to be worthy of. Like, he really treated me as his kid, as a regular human being, And so, but then still, when I was alone with my mom, I still, the trauma and just that constant, like, emotional, physical abuse was still going on. And on top of that, I was, I think, one of the only 2 Asians in the whole entire school in Germany. So they made fun of how I looked, how I spoke, and combining that with just so much, I don't know, just abandonment and like abuse and telling me or treating me like I'm nothing. I really believe that I'm nothing, constantly like feeding those lies. And so because of my broken childhood, I had a very low view of myself. And so in high school, I just remembered, because I was looking for love in all the wrong people in all the wrong places. And so I remember in high school, I was just dating. Like I was just looking for like love in guys. And so they kind of knew that I was kind of broken or something. And so they just played to date me. They would just like, date me and like did inappropriate things to me, and then just basically left me and ghosted me, and then tell the news of how such an easy and cheap target I was to the whole entire class grade or grade class. So I felt just very, very, used. And I feel like, wow, like, why is everybody treating me like I am nothing? Therefore, I really believe that I am nothing. Like that lie just grew deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I dated this one dude that really changed the course of my life. He was not only abusive and narcissistic, but he also had a gambling addiction. I know, great choice, right? So I gave him my tuition money and obviously didn't give it back. And my dad found out, and my dad is a very conservative dad. He's like, no dating until you finish college, Aggie. But once he found out, not only was I dating, but I gave my ex-boyfriend his hard-earned money, he was pissed. And that just escalated so quickly. Like, I remember he was like, we're getting into a car right now. We're driving to his house, which is like 2 hours away. And like, I think parents just got physical back then. And like, my dad took my passport away, so I couldn't go back to the States to finish college. Like, you're staying here, I'm going to watch you every second. And at that time, also, our mom left us to another country to do her own thing. And so I was just by myself with my younger sister, who was only, I think, 6 or 7 or 8 years old at that time. And I remember, even with my dad, I got a lot of verbal abuse. Like, he would tell me all the time how stupid, how useless, how worthless I am for making that decision. And I just remembered being quarantined, quote unquote, in the house for 1 year. I would be afraid to go to the bathroom because his room is next to the bathroom. So whenever he heard my footsteps, he would just summon me into his room and just shame me over and over and over again. Not only in private at home, but in public. Like, he told his friends and his family, and they shamed me the same way in public. But I just remembered just one day where we're supposed to have a family dinner. I was sitting in the car so scared because I knew I'm gonna get humiliated again in public. But then I was sitting with my Samsung Black MP3 player. Yes, I'm that old. And even though I wasn't really, listening to Christian music back then, the song Walk by Faith by Jeremy Camp popped up out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere, God knew. But basically it said, this broken road, will you trust that I will guide you every way, and this broken road is preparing my will for you, which I completely have no clue at that moment, but I had so much peace, because when God speaks to you, it gives you so much peace, even though you didn't understand it back then, what he's trying to say to you. But anyways, after just 1 year of constant abuse, I just had it. I escaped my dad's house, which is now crazy to think that I could survive that, because I'm not naturally a wild person. But I guess if you are in pain, you do the things you normally would not have done. So I was just jumping around from my ex-boyfriend's mom's house to my aunt's house to my grandparents' house. And then one day my aunt called me, hey, you still want to go back to the States? I was like, yeah. Okay, then go back to your dad's house. And I was like, excuse me, what, ma'am? Like, go back to who? Dad? He's gonna kill me. But anyways, I still went back to his house because God knew what he was doing, like he always does. On that day, my dad gave me my passport back. And the next scene felt just like a movie. Like, my aunt was like, okay, you got your passport, pack your bags. I'm going to pick you up when your dad's not back. And I just remembered, I believe my sister was in the room. And again, like, our mom already left us. And she was so young. She was 6, 7, or 8 years old. And I can't help but think, and it breaks my heart to think, like, my gosh, sis, are you leaving me too? Why is everyone leaving me? And so she just recently shared, like how she had to deal with so much pain and trauma on her own because our dad
Mm-hmm.
was working to provide for us and mom wasn't there and I wasn't there. And she was just dealing with so much unresolved trauma and pain as a kid that no kid should ever experience. But anyways, so I remember I was at the airport. My aunt gave me $2,000 and she's like, don't worry about anything. Just focus on finishing school. And I was sitting
Mm-hmm.
on the window aisle. I said, okay, how is this going to work out? Because I don't know a single soul. School starts in a week. Tuition is way more than $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
But God is always working behind the scenes in gazillion ways you can't even begin to imagine. And so 3 days before school started, he housed me in a house where the landlord was either a pastor or an elder.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I was covered in prayer. Okay. And I really believe that those prayers carried me to where I am with Jesus today. And he brought me to church. He brought me into a community, like you said, like a real community where people truly love for one another, support one
Mm-hmm.
another, and really treated me as I am truly their kid or their sister or their brother
Yeah.
because we are one in Christ, right?
Mm.
And so looking back, I was like, wow, Lord, the pain is great, the trauma is great, but your redemption is always greater. Because, like I said, like if I didn't come from a broken family, Germany would have been out of the picture. I don't know what would have happened to us. And if I didn't come from a broken family, I wouldn't have a low self-worth issue, which I'm still struggling with, which the Lord is still trying to heal me from it.
Mm.
I wouldn't have dated this toxic dude. That 1 year delayed it wouldn't have happened. And I would not have been housed in a house, where the pastor and the whole church were praying for me and loving me. And I wouldn't have, been able to stay in the States, and I would not have been able to be on podcasts and to do podcasting and to share the healing and hope that I have found in Jesus towards others, and with the hope and prayer that others find healing and hope too. So I guess long story short is like, if you if you surrender your pain and your trauma and everything to Jesus, for sure, he's gonna redeem that in ways you can't even begin to imagine. So yeah, that's my story. And one more thing. One more thing. So yeah, that is why I am, or not I am, but the Lord is calling me to start my own podcast, Unspoken with Aggie Park, which, with the hope of nothing is ever too shameful, because I thought my story was too shameful. Why am I still struggling with, low self-worth, suicidal thoughts, blah, 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 depression, blah, 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 as a Christian, right? Is my faith not strong enough? Am I not like a good Christian? Whatever. But I want to give people hope that it's a process, that no one is ever too far gone, and no part of your story is ever too shameful or too broken for Jesus to heal, redeem, and to use for his glory. So, yeah, that's it.
I just want to say thank you, Aggie, that, it's never easy to share what one's gone through, but it's also inspiring for those who are feeling like, I don't know, why am I still here? Well, I just feel that it's an ongoing process and you're still growing. We're all still growing. We're still trying to figure this whole thing of life out. But at the same time, I commend you for just being raw and just sharing your story with us today. It was really nice that you felt brave enough, and also just knowing that we are human. We do make mistakes. We do try, and you found that community, and it was a Christian community. That sounds wonderful that you were able to find that. Sometimes we don't realize how much a community can make a difference. One thing that a lot of us do is, these mountains, this is a quote, these mountains that you are carrying, you are only supposed to climb. We kind of put too much on ourselves.
Yeah.
finding that balance. It's not about some being perfect. I feel like
Mhm.
for us, finding wholeness. What is the things that you're not whole? Being kinder to yourself, that you've
Yeah.
been through stuff that others people will not understand. I feel
Mhm.
like one step that helped me was that people don't have to understand my story, Aggie, but they can
Mhm.
still support me. They can
Yeah.
still support you. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just want to ask final thoughts as we wrap things up. It was such a pleasure to have you share your story with us today. I think it's just, I like more and more people feeling brave enough to be
Mm.
vulnerable, to share what matters to them. So, any final thoughts as we end?
Well, I really appreciate you. I'm so grateful and honored to be a guest on your podcast, and maybe you can be a guest on my podcast too.
Just shoot me an email. Shoot me an email.
Yes.
No problem. All right.
But yeah, I feel like I really love what you're doing, and to bring people the courage and the platform to be raw and real, like you said, because I feel like when we're not speaking the truth, when we're always putting a mask on, nobody's
Mm-hmm.
going to benefit from that. Not yourself, not other people, because people are going through stuff. Everybody is going through something. Okay, nobody's
Yeah.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So when we share our struggles, our shortcomings, I think it could be the start of erasing just the lie of, oh, as Christians, you have to be perfect all the time. You can't struggle with anything. It would erase the shame and the lie that the enemy holds upon us, upon the church, and truly have more confidence that we can share in a safe space,
Mm-hmm.
that because we're all struggling, hey, you're struggling with this, let me pray for you, let me walk life with you. Just there's
Mm-hmm.
no like shame or condemnation. So I'm praying this for my own podcast, I'm praying this for your podcast and every podcast out there, that it would truly bring a lot of healing and freedom in Jesus Christ. So that's my final
Yeah, and
thought.
my final thought, what you said just reminds me of this one illustration. A guy has an office and has this kind of artwork that looks pretty jank, not really good. And they're like, "What's that art? Why do you have that? It's kind of it feels like it's falling apart."
Yeah.
The guy's like, "That's my grandson's. It's the best artwork ever.
Mm.
It's the best thing. I will have it there." So a lot of times with mental health, a lot of people may not suffer, but let's remember the derivative. Remember trigonometry. The derivative is the people, the name of that person, that grandson, that son, the daughter, the wife, the husband, whoever that is. That's why this is important, because it's always about the people. And as on the faith side, I find something bigger than yourself. I've found a lot of healing from not thinking of things on the ground, on this thinking deeper. God was a big part of that. Jesus is a big part and still is. But I will never tell people what to believe. I'll just encourage them to find
Yeah.
something bigger than themselves. But
Mm.
thank you so much, Aggie, for coming on and sharing your insight. It's been a pleasure.
Mm.
I just want to share with those who are listening, ReviveMinistryFL.com. Check us out. The audio version's there. YouTube, we have the video version and again, I just want to leave you with this one quote as we say goodbye. It's from an unknown person. It says, "It isn't weak to ask for help. It's like using a flashlight when you're lost in the dark."
Yep.